Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Whoa. It's so easy to get sidetracked. And once that mind gets running on a project in the material world, it doesn't want to let go of it. It just wants to run with it, because that mind is convinced that this is the most important thing to do, and Krishna will just have to wait. Don't bother me, Krishna, I'm busy now. And that can go on for a while. Fortunately, the more I practice Krishna consciousness, the shorter those little interludes are, and the less severe. I mean, an interlude like that, if the mind really got onto something, it could be lifetimes. It could be lifetimes. And even in this lifetime, it could be years and years and years. The mind becomes conditioned to something, attached to some idea of what to do, to be happy, to be successful, to be fulfilling, like that, within the material environment. It could be years and years and years. But the more I practice Krishna consciousness, the less those little interludes are. So, this last little interlude was about 2 days, and it wasn't any big life-changing decisions. It's just a little distraction. So, what I saw happening was no taste. No taste for chanting the japa on beads. So I'm busy, I have this other thing to do. What was it to bother me with this chanting on beads? What good will that do? The mind. And then not being able to read properly. No taste in the reading. Like, why am I reading this? I have this other thing. It's just the mind. Preoccupied with some material solution that it wants to. So by practicing, like this morning, I was finally able to get up a little early and to chant on the beads. And it took about an hour to clear out that chattering of the mind. The mind was fighting the whole time. But finally the mind became subdued, surrendered, and is quieted down, sitting in a corner somewhere, but it could flare up at any moment. So, it's a science of Krishna consciousness, and we practice. And the more we get a taste, the more that drives us on. It's said that the realized souls have related in their writings and in their instructions that you have to become greedy. Actually, greedy and a kind of lust. Not material lust, but spiritual lust, a spiritual greed for Krishna. Krishna means his activities, his pastimes, his association, which means his associates. So we have to become greedy for that transcendental personality of Godhead. And so we keep practicing. So today, Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to hear from the great devotee Jad Bharat, great, renounced, transcendental, pure devotee of the Lord. Acting as an eccentric Brahmin. in his conversations with Maharaj Rahugana, and this is ongoing, and he has chastised Maharaj Rahugana at least a few times, calling him a fool, helping to open up his hearing. The relationship with the spiritual master is so important like that, because these are not just mental exercises. These are heartfelt relationships ultimately with Krishna. And by getting that heartfelt transcendental experience with Krishna's representative, in whom Krishna is manifest, then the aspiring devotee, the disciple, is able to break through that simply functioning on the level of the mind, and to reach the chamber of the heart, which is where the Lord is situated as Supersoul, and make that connection with the Lord. The pure devotee spiritual master is the external manifestation of Supersoul within the heart. Why is that? Because that pure devotee spiritual master is in relationship, himself or herself, with the Supersoul within their own heart. So their body and their mind are spiritualized. It's like Prabhupada would say, the iron, when it's placed in the fire, an iron rod placed in the fire, it becomes just like fire. So that's the pure devotee spiritual master. They're just like fire. And they can ignite that same kind of fire in those that are submissive to hearing from them, especially the hearing, because that is service. Say, to hear, inquire submissively and render service. But hearing submissively is service. That all the potencies of the Lord are there in His holy name, hearing and chanting, and hearing His pastimes. So, Maharaj Rahugana. We're all like Maharaj Rahugana. And this is text 17. Being treated by them, the living entity, in the forest of the material world, tries to give up the association of so-called yogi swamis and incarnations and come to the association of real devotees. Wait, we read this. We've read this already. I'm going to try and find the verse. Somehow, I keep note here of a bookmark, and somehow, see, I'm so out of it last few days, and I don't even know where we are in the reading. Wow. All right, we'll find it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, it's not text 18, it's 16, it's text 21. All right, so go over here to text 21. Okay, so Maharaj Rahugana is speaking now. Text 22, actually. So he's replying to what he's hearing from Jad Bharat, and what he's experiencing in his association. And he's glorifying Jad Bharat. So this is text 22. And yeah. It is not at all wonderful that simply being covered by the dust of your lotus feet, one immediately attains the platform of pure devotional service to Adhokshaja, which is not available even to great demigods like Lord Brahma. By associating with you just for a moment, I am now freed from all argument, false prestige, lack of discrimination, which are the roots of entanglement in the material world. Now I'm free from all these problems. Whoa, what a beautiful verse. This is the potency of the pure devotee representative of the Lord. They're fully empowered by the Lord. They're fully surrendered to the Supersoul within the heart, who is giving them all direction. And according to their relationship with the Lord, they're serving in a certain mood of loving relationship, which is very personal. It's between them and the Lord. So the verse again, it is not at all wonderful that simply by being covered by the dust of your lotus feet, one immediately attains the platform of pure devotional service to Adhokshaja, which is not available even to great demigods like Lord Brahma. By associating with you just for a moment, I'm now freed from all argument, false prestige, lack of discrimination, which are the roots of entanglement in the material world. Now I'm free from all these problems. So the roots of entanglement, argument, false prestige, lack of discrimination, these are the earmarks of the false ego. Argument. Arguing. What does arguing mean? Arguing means I'm right, you're wrong. And the way to establish that is by arguing with you. False prestige. Yes, what I'm doing and who I am, I'm very significant, I'm very important. I'm very important. I'm more important than others. With false prestige. And struggling very hard to maintain that prestige. Oh my goodness. I always have to have new conquests and new acquisitions to keep that false prestige up, bolster that false ego. And lack of discrimination. So I can't tell spirit from matter, can't tell right from wrong. So these are the earmarks of the false ego. And that's the root of entanglement in the material world. So Maharaj Rahugana says, just by associating with you, pure devotee of the Lord, for a few moments, and being covered by the dust of your lotus feet. Dust of the feet. Feet, what do feet do? Well, they do a few things. They allow traveling, moving around. One moves around on the feet, and in the course of moving around, they have dust. So where are those feet moving? They're not moving in the material world, not the transcendental feet of the Lord. moving in the spiritual world. And the dust that's clinging to the feet What is that dust? Well, dust is something that it's like little fragments that break loose and float around. Dust. Very fine, very, very fine particles. The dust of your lotus feet. One immediately attains the platform of pure devotional service to Adhokshaja. Feet also support. They give support. They move around and they give support for standing. I'm sure they do other things. It's said that personality of Godhead, Sakalendriya, all his senses and all his different bodily parts can perform any function of any of the others, so his hands can be like his feet, his eyes can be like his feet. It sounds kind of bizarre, but on the spiritual platform, we're not material bodies. So in the spiritual understanding spirit, it's not so bizarre. It's not like it's some weird form. Because materially, the senses are all limited to perform only one function. Just like in this world, there are the trees, they really only give one kind of fruit. An apple tree just gives apples. Peach tree just produces peaches. But in the spiritual energy, the divine energy, transcendental energy, a tree can give any kind of fruit. One tree can give any kind of fruit. So there's a lot more flexibility, and you can see there's a lot, if that's the case, then there's a lot more variegatedness going on, and there's a lot more flexibility, which brings a lot more enjoyment, because variety is the mother of enjoyment. So, transcending those limitations. But by associating with you for just a moment, I'm now freed from all argument. In other words, I'm freed from false ego. Prabhupada's purport, and it's very short, association with pure devotees certainly frees one from material clutches. This is certainly true of King Rahugana's association with Jad Bharat. King Rahugana was immediately freed from the misgivings of material association. The arguments offered by pure devotees to their disciples are so convincing that even a dull-headed disciple is immediately enlightened with spiritual knowledge. Yeah, in that verse, when he was saying, I am now freed from all argument, that argument meant challenging the spiritual master. The spiritual master was presenting arguments. So there's definitely a place for argument. But it's not from the platform of I'm right and you're wrong. It's from the platform of giving access to the transcendence. It's from the platform of devotion. Devotional argument is different from material argument. Devotional argument enlightens. Devotional argument, arguing devotionally for the devotional service of the Lord is devotional service. It takes on the same quality, devotional quality, That's why everything can be used in the service of the Lord. Argument, when it's used as a devotional service to the Lord, takes on the quality of devotion, transcendental quality. So when Maharaj Rahugana says he's free from argument, he was arguing from the material platform, just like Arjuna was arguing from the material platform. And then Krishna presented his devotional arguments, and that was it. Arjuna became freed. Because those devotional arguments are coming from a whole nother platform. They're coming from the platform of devotion. And so they're surcharged with spiritual energy. So when they say, the arguments offered by pure devotees to their disciples are so convincing that even a dull-headed disciple is immediately enlightened with spiritual knowledge. Yeah, someone who isn't even very intelligent, or they get it because of the devotional aspect. That's the convincing, is experiencing that taste. Like when I was distributing, trying to sell the books early on in the movement, when the great flood of distribution was going on, book distribution, I would see some of the other disciples who were much more successful in getting the books into the hands of people. I was somewhat successful, but they were very successful. And I saw that sometimes they would be so excited in their service of running up to people and approaching them to take a book about Krishna. It was pure devotee. And sometimes I would hear them, what they were saying to these people. To be honest with you, it really didn't make a lot of sense. Because they were so excited, the words were coming out, maybe the sentences weren't quite right, or they were using the wrong word to try to say what they were trying. I knew what they were trying to say, and amazingly so, the people that they were approaching also knew what they were trying to say, even though sometimes the sentences were, like when Lord Chaitanya was in ecstasy, and sometimes he couldn't chant the mantras probably, like he couldn't even say Jagannath's name. He'd say Jaga Gaga Mumu, things like that, because of the ecstasy. So that ecstasy was what convinced the people. What happened was they became attracted to what that devotee had. They saw that devotee had something, some devotional ecstasy, and they wanted it. And what the devotee was trying to tell them is, if you take this book, you can have this too. That's what's in this book. That's why I'm so excited. What you see is because of what's in this book. That convinced them. So similarly, that's what's happening to Maharaj Rahugana. It's not just the arguments. It's what he's experiencing in the association of the pure devotee. And he wants what that pure devotee has. And the pure devotee is telling him, okay, this is why, and this is what, and you can have it too. Hear me. Hear what I'm saying. I'm telling you how it works, what you need to do to have this too. So that's the convincing. And Maharaj Rahugana says, yes, I'm convinced. I agree. I'm experiencing it. Text 23. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the great personalities, whether they walk on the earth's surface as children, young boys, avadutas, great Brahmins, even if they're hidden under guises. I offer my respects to all of them. By their mercy, may there be good fortune in the royal dynasties that are always offending them. So, get a little picture, a little picture here of what the dynamics are. for the ruling class, for the administrators, they tend to offend the transcendental personalities. They tend to offend them. It just looks like it goes with the territory. I mean, that's what Maharaj Rahugana is saying. He's saying, by the mercy of these great souls, may there be good fortune in royal dynasties that are always offending them. Yeah, they're so like diametrically opposed in terms of how they deal with the material energy. The royal dynasties, they have all opulence, all power, all majesty. Everyone's kowtowing to them. Everyone's doing everything they say to do, like this. Very intoxicating materially. And there are the avadutas and the Brahmins who tend to be quite renounced. And their message is, just give it all up. Or if you have to deal with it in a detached way. Don't try to get into the spirit of enjoyment. Do it as a service for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's a dynamic there, and the tendency is for those that become attached to the spirit of enjoyment of material situation to offend. So Maharaj Rahugana has been relieved of that, and he's in a whole nother place now. He's taken the medicine, and he's experiencing his own spiritual identity. He's beginning to experience, he's waking up with relationship with the Lord within his own heart. Jad Bharat has relieved him of misconceptions of who he is. Prabhupada's commentary, King Rahugana was very repentant because he had forced Jad Bharat to carry his palanquin. He therefore began offering prayers to all kinds of Brahmins and self-realized persons, even though they might be playing like children or hiding in some guises. The four Kumaras walked everywhere in the guise of 5-year-old boys. And similarly, there are many Brahmins, knowers of Brahman, who traverse the globe either as young men, children, or avadutas. Being puffed up due to their position, the royal dynasties generally offend these great personalities. Therefore King Rahugana began to offer his respectful obeisances unto them, so that the offensive royal dynasties might not glide down into a hellish condition. If one offends a great personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not excuse one, although the great personalities themselves might not take offense. Maharaj Ambarish was offended by Durvasa, who even approached Lord Vishnu for pardon. Lord Vishnu would not grant him pardon. Therefore he had to fall down at the lotus feet of Maharaj Ambarish. Even though Maharaj Ambarish was a Kshatriya Grihastha, one should be very careful not to offend the lotus feet of Vaishnavas and Brahmins. Yeah, we see this offensive mentality is the most detrimental thing that can happen on the path of devotional service. Because those great souls are the link to Krishna within one's own heart. And without being able to take advantage of their association and their instructions, their writings, without being able to take advantage of that nicely, then we don't have that connection with Supersoul in our own heart, because Krishna is not pleased, because that is Krishna's arrangement. He makes those arrangements that there are those personalities who are surrendered to him. And that's how one approaches Krishna, is through his devotee, through his representative. Krishna never appears alone. He's always surrounded by devotees and associates. And when he incarnates, he always has those devotees and associates. and they incarnate with him to enhance his activities and his pastimes. And chief of those, the topmost, is Srimati Radharani. And her Krishna has expansions, and Radharani also has expansions. But that is how we approach Krishna, is through his devotees. And if we offend the devotee, we see them materially, or in this case, like Maharaj Rahugana, he tried to force Jad Bharat to serve him, like Hiranyakashipu. I am the king. Like that. And also Jai and Vijay, the famous pastime there of they wouldn't allow saintly persons to enter Vaikuntha, to take darshan of Lord Vishnu. They prevented them from doing that and laughed at them because externally they appeared like young boys, 5-year-old boys. Go home when you grow up, and then you can come back, like that. So, be very careful with the devotees. Text 24. Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, O son of Mother Uttara, there were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jad Bharat due to being insulted by King Rahugana, who made him carry his palanquin. But Jad Bharat neglected this. His heart again became calm and quiet like an ocean. Although King Rahugana had insulted him, he was a great Paramahamsa. Being a Vaishnava, he was naturally very kind-hearted and therefore told the king about the constitutional position of the soul. He then forgot the insult because King Rahugana pitifully begged pardon at his lotus feet. After this, he began to wander all over the earth, just as before. Oh my. What is it? I have no desire, Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastika. I have no desire for money, I have no wealth, I have no desire for followers. I have no desire for beautiful women. I only want your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. So this is Jad Bharat. Here he has a disciple, and a very wealthy one. He could just move in the palace, get a little cottage just outside the palace, and he could be the advisor to the king. He'd have a position. No. He's not going to do that. No. He began to wander all over the earth, just as before. So Maharaj Rahugana got the mercy. And now Maharaj Rahugana, I wonder if he's going to get even deeper mercy, maybe a little mood of separation here, where he has to go back and make some decisions about his life. He's not going to have his Gurudev standing right there in front of him, chastising him and telling him, spoon-feeding him everything. Let's see what happens to Maharaj Rahugana when Jad Bharat leaves. Prabhupada's commentary. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Dev describes the symptoms of great personalities. Tatikshava Karunika Surita Sarvadehinam. A saintly devotee is certainly very tolerant. He's the friend of all living entities. He does not create enemies within the world. A pure devotee has all the qualities of a sadhu. Jad Bharat is an example of this. Due to the material body, his senses were certainly agitated when he was insulted by King Rahugana, but later, due to the king's humble submission, Jad Bharat excused him. It's the duty of everyone desiring to return to Godhead to become submissive like King Rahugana and beg pardon of Vaishnavas one may have offended. Vaishnavas are generally very kind-hearted Therefore, if one immediately submits himself at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, one is immediately cleared of offensive reactions. If one does not do so, the reactions will remain, and the results will not be very palatable. Hey, yeah. So Prabhupada's stressing this offense problem. And in the previous verse also, he made the point that the only way to, if there is an offense committed to the Vaishnava, the only way to counteract it is by begging the pardon of that Vaishnava. So that may not be possible to do that directly. It may not be possible. Perhaps that Vaishnava has already left the planet. And how will you go to them and fall at their feet? They've already passed on. They're not in that body anymore. They're not manifest like that anymore. So how do you get free from the offense you may have committed to them? Well, it can be done mentally, with all sincerity. Because it's the Vaishnava themselves doesn't actually accept the offense. Maharaj Ruga was a little irritated, but he didn't actually accept the offense. It was just he didn't curse him or like that. He was a little irritated, that this was going on. And then when Maharaj Rahugana realized what he was doing was like spiritual suicide, and he begged the devotee to please excuse me, I'm in ignorance, enlighten me, please. Then, of course, everything just opened up and a great transaction took place. But if we're not able to go to the devotee directly, then we have to do it mentally. We can't carry around offensive mentality. And if we have committed actual offense to a devotee, and I know I have, more than once, I come clean. In my ignorance, I have said and done things that certainly not acceptable. So within my heart, I need relief from that. I can't just ignore that I never did those things. I can't do that because I inconvenienced others. I put others in distress. I harmed others. So I can't do it directly because they're not available. I have to do it within my mind and within my heart with all sincerity and realize my mistake, because that's what is needed, is that change of heart. And when Krishna within the heart sees that change of heart and sees that it mentally and spiritually have changed that attitude, then there's relief. In other words, we have to own. We have to take responsibility for our actions and see our mistakes and rectify our consciousness. Then we can get some relief. Otherwise, if we just cover it over, we don't own up to it, there's a contamination in there that will disturb devotional life. We do have to become pure-hearted, completely pure-hearted. And those are some of the things that need to be cleaned out. That's some of the stuff that needs to be removed. So that we'll be able to take advantage properly of pure devotees. If we offend one devotee, one Vaishnava, then that mentality prevents us from being able to take advantage of other devotees, other pure devotees. Because all pure devotees, all devotees, are the same, in one sense. Krishna is manifest in them all, maybe in little different ways, little different packaging. But it's the same contents. So if we offend one, and we don't own up to it, and we hold on to some sort of a false ego, I'm justified in what I said or did, then how will we be able to take advantage properly of other association? Because the spiritual master is one, and Krishna is one. He just manifests in different ways. So it's very important to clear that up. And knowing that Vaishnavas are kind-hearted, if we can submit ourselves at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava, that is tremendous benefit. If we can do that. It's pretty overwhelming. But if we can't do that, and we know that Vaishnavas are kind-hearted, we can't do it directly, then if we can do that within our own heart, knowing that the Vaishnava is kind-hearted, we'll get relief also. And then be able to move on in spiritual life and take association nicely. If we hold on to this false ego, justified position, I'm justified in committing these offenses. I was justified in what I said about that person, and I hold to that. We're the ones that suffer. Because we can't recognize the devotional energy when it's manifest in someone. And without that devotional energy, we have no access to Krishna. Text 25. After receiving lessons from the great devotee Jad Bharat, King Rahugana of the state of Sauvira became completely aware of the constitutional position of the soul. He thus gave up the bodily conception completely. My dear king, whoever takes shelter of the servant of the Lord is certainly glorified, because he can, without difficulty, give up bodily conception. See, there it is again. It's the servant of the Lord. And it could be many times removed. Servant of the 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 Lord. Why is that? Because that devotional energy is manifest all the way down the line. It's the same devotional energy. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada's commentary. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastri Kaya Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhihaya. It is a fact that if one takes shelter of a pure devotee, one attains all perfection, even if the association is a short one. A sadhu is a pure devotee of the Lord. It has been our practical experience that the first instruction of our spiritual master infused us with Krishna consciousness, so that now we are at least on the path of Krishna consciousness and can understand the philosophy. As a result, there are many devotees engaged in this Krishna consciousness movement. The whole world is revolving under the bodily conception. Therefore, there must be devotees all over the world to deliver people from the false bodily conception and fully engage them in Krishna consciousness. Jai Srila Prabhupada, such a sweet purport. Prabhupada's taking the opportunity to glorify Bhaktisiddhanta and the whole process of disciplic succession. So nice. And Srila Prabhupada's association with Bhaktisiddhanta didn't have much association. He was a householder, living outside, living far away, and Bhaktisiddhanta was organizing a whole movement with sannyasis and temples and ashrams, and was stirring up a whole devotional, spiritual Sankirtan movement. And Prabhupada was a little bit removed. He was maintaining his family, and he was a businessman like this. And he had some association with, very limited. He visited him a few times, and then there were some letters. And while the other disciples were with Bhaktisiddhanta, like right around him all the time, hearing him all the time and serving him. And Prabhupada didn't have that direct association, physical association like that. But he's saying here, he says, our practical experience, this is Prabhupada's practical experience, was that the first instruction of our spiritual master infused us with Krishna consciousness. So he experienced what Maharaj Rahugan experienced, just by the association of the pure devotee, even briefly, even for a few moments, one can be infused, or they can make that connection with Krishna through the devotional energy, devotional service. In his humility, this is another sign of the pure devotee. He's very humble. Like Jed Bharat, he just continued wandering like he was before. Very humble. So that now Prabhupada says, now we are at least on the path of Krishna consciousness and can understand the philosophy. Prabhupada speaking of himself, I'm on the path, I understand the philosophy. And he says, as the result, there are many devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness movement. So because, and Prabhupada's saying here, is because of Bhaktisiddhanta, my association with Bhaktisiddhanta, I'm able to pass along to you what I got from him. And so it stands to reason that what Prabhupada wants is for us to pass along to others what we get from Prabhupada. Right? It just makes sense. And that is something extraordinary. The whole world is revolving under the bodily conception. So first must be relieved from the bodily conception. Before anyone can go anywhere, there must be the education and the enlightenment and the realization of the difference between spirit and matter. That has to come. Can't go anywhere without that. So then he says, devotees all over the world, there must be devotees all over the world to deliver people from the false bodily conception. But it doesn't stop there. The rest of the sentence is, and fully engage them in Krishna consciousness. So, enlightening and engaging fully. It's the 1-2 punch. Maya has a 1-2 punch. It's cover and kick. Cover the living entity's intelligence, make him identify with the material energy, material body, and then kick, kick, kick. So that's the 1-2 punch for Maya. But the 1-2 punch for Krishna is deliver people from the material conception so that they realize their spiritual nature and then engage fully in Krishna's service. That's the Krishna conscious 1-2 punch. So it's like a perverted reflection, if you think of it, like the reflection of the covering. See, real knowledge that I'm spirit, not matter. Covering of that, that's like the reflection, covered through matter. Perverted. One goes up, one goes down. And then fully engage in Krishna's service, and the opposite for that is kick, kick, kick. Fully engaging in Krishna's service, totally blissful, never any failure, everything's always successful. Because just by engaging in service, regardless of the result, the success is there. Because the success is engaging in service, that's the success. And then the result of what happens from that service is up to Krishna. In the material world, the perverted reflection of that is try to engage in material activities, and everything depends on the result. And the result either doesn't come, or it's not what you wanted, or if it does come, it doesn't stay. So kick, 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 kick. It's a perverted reflection. Yeah. Okay. Text 26. And this is the last verse in this chapter, so after this, I guess we'll stop. King Parikshit then told Sukadeva Goswami, "My dear Lord, O great devotee sage, you are omniscient. You have very nicely described the position of the conditioned soul who is compared to a merchant in the forest. From these instructions, intelligent men can understand that the senses of a person in the bodily conception are like rogues and thieves in that forest. One's wife and children are like jackals and other ferocious animals. However, it's not very easy for the unintelligent to understand the purport of this story, because it's difficult to extricate the exact meaning from the allegory. I therefore request your holiness to give the direct meaning." Wow! Like Maharaj Rahugana, when Jad Bharat gave him some good instruction, Maharaj Rahugana early on in their conversation said, "Yes, I accept what you're saying. I can understand it with my mind, but I don't have like a really full realization of what you're saying. Can you please go a little deeper? Can you try again? Approach it from another angle?" And then Jad Bharat chastised him and basically pointed out that he was a fool because of the way he was situated in life and how he was behaving. And then things went on from there. The chastisement helped to brought something heartfelt. And the heart opened up to be able to hear nicely, because there was some feeling there. Chastisement brought some feeling in the relationship. They weren't just discussing on a philosophical platform. There was some feeling there. Master and disciple, a little chastisement. Feel something. Feel embarrassed. Feel stupid. Feel like a fool. Feel something. Feel something. And then the love can develop, you see. So, to start feeling something. So, I'm wondering, we're going to find out later if this is what's happening with Maharaj Parikshit, is that he's accepting what he's heard. These are wonderful instructions, But now, like Maharaj Rahugana, Maharaj Parikshit wants to feel something. Like intelligently, he's accepting all of this. And now he's saying, I request your holiness to give the direct meaning. And we're going to get that in the next chapter. So let's see what happens. It'll be very interesting how the relationship between Maharaj Rahugana and Jad Bharat developed and became personal and heartfelt. Now this relationship between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami. See, Maharaj Parikshit heard what happened to Maharaj Rahugana, how he had these realizations, how his heart was opened up. He wants that. He's heard about it. Now he wants that. And he sees he has the same opportunity right there in Sukadeva Goswami. And he wants it. He's becoming greedy. He's saying, give the direct meaning. It's interesting because Lord Chaitanya played that part. Although Lord Chaitanya was Krishna, he played that part. And he, in his conversation with Ramananda Roy, he said the same thing. He said, yes, I hear your instructions about, how to live one's life and become pious and to even become transcendental. But please go deeper. Give a more direct meaning. Ultimately, I want the most direct meaning. And he was establishing that kind of rapport with his devotee, Ramananda Roy. Lord Chaitanya wanted to experience that, what it was like when a devotee is looking for the direct meaning, is approaching the source. He wanted to experience that, so he took the role of, say, Maharaj Parikshit in inquiring, and he took the role of Maharaj Rahugana in inquiring. He took the role of, I'm the fool, and you enlighten me, please. Although he's not, he's Krishna. But he wanted to experience that. And so Ramananda Roy, what could he do? He was being asked to serve like that. So, so the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are so fantastic. Everything's there in Lord Chaitanya because he's Krishna himself. So this is setting the stage for the next chapter. And Prabhupada's commentary is one sentence. There are many stories and incidents in Srimad Bhagavatam that describe figuratively. Such allegorical descriptions may not be understood by unintelligent men. Therefore, it's the duty of the student to approach a bona fide spiritual master for the direct explanation. Yeah, to get off that mental platform and to experience that relationship with the Guru. Yeah. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the 5th Canto, 13th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Further Talks Between King Rahugana and Jad Bharat.